Welcome, guys. Welcome. Today, I want to talk about the show Chocolate, which came out back in 2019 and it ran till January 2020. It is an older Korean drama, but I am discussing it for a few reasons. Uh, I have very little memory of this show, if I'm being completely honest with you, and I'm just kind of going off of my memory of the show. I did watch the whole thing though, and I'll just talk about what I recall. What I remember from the series is that the character played by Hajiwon, actress Hajiwon, cries a lot. Yeah, like there's like not a single moment on screen where her eyes are not watery. Like even if she's not, crying, it's like her eyes are still really watery. Like it's insane. But there's a reason for that. Hajiwon's character suffers from PTSD. She survived a mall collapse, and she's one of the survivors. And so this character, Chayoung, continues to, how do I say, she continues to relive that trauma by cooping herself up in small storage spaces whenever she has a flashback episode. And I'm talking about this show only for a few reasons. One, I want to talk about one of the actors who is in this show, and for another, I just really need to. I'm talking about this show for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is Teo Yu, actor Teo Yu, who I never really noticed until very recently because I went to an A24 screening of the film Past Lives, which Teo Yu co stars in with Korean American actress Greta Lee. But the film is written and directed by Korean Canadian writer and director Celine Song. Now, this is Celine Song's first film ever. She's never made a short film. This is just her debut feature film, but it's produced by CJ, it's distributed by A24. That's quite a big feat. And I was really moved by the movie. It's very beautifully crafted. The cinematography is really gorgeous. The music is really astounding. And it's a very New York movie. Yes, like this small New York slice of life, indie flavored, deeply indie flavored kind of New York movie. But Teo Yu's acting in this film was just beyond remarkable. And I mean, he's done a handful of Korean dramas, like Love to Hate You, that's currently on Netflix. I didn't finish seeing it, but that's he's on that. And yeah, like I just never really took to him until I saw this film Past Lives because of one thing. It's because he's so vulnerable in that movie. He's like the most vulnerable um person like I've ever seen on screen. I don't think I've seen a vulnerable performance like that before ever, And I've seen a lot of movies. I've seen a lot of TV shows. But just something about his performance, his character, his role, and that vulnerable delivery in this movie that I just found so heartbreaking. But his performance is just so lovely that it was just like folding my heart right back into wholeness again because it was just so beautiful. So I recommend this film, Past Lives, if you haven't seen it or heard about it. There are a lot of movies that are out, we just don't hear about it or know anything about it. Speaking of which, I came across this movie, To Leslie, which is also on Netflix. And actress Andrea Riseborough, I believe, was nominated for an Oscar for her performance in this very small film. But it is such a good movie. And I was like a little disappointed in myself for missing it in theaters because I usually go to the cinemas like at least once a week and I'll see a movie. But for whatever reason, this movie just never, you know, it just crossed my radar and I saw it on Netflix and I was just like, oh my God, this movie is amazing. And Mark Maron's performance is amazing. Mark Maron's accent is so awkward in this movie, but it's like that's not the point. Even his awkward accent has a place in this movie, and he adds such a brilliant color to this film as a whole. So that's another film for you guys to check out. I guess this is a K-drama, you know, podcast where I just talk about movies, huh? So okay, Teo Yu, he's an amazing actor. We covered that. I want to see more work by Teo Yu. Absolutely, he's on my radar. Now, this show Chocolate, I want to talk about it because all right, first of all, it's underwhelming. It's an underwhelming show. I saw it back in like 2019, okay? I only talk about it because the writer is Lee Kyung-hee. So writer Lee Kyung-hee, she's famous for writing shows like Sangdu Let's Go to School, which had the actor P in it. Also, Kong Hyo-jin is in it. But she is most famous for the show I'm Sorry, I Love You, which came out in 2004. And let me put it this way. I watched the show I'm Sorry, I Love You at least 10 times. Like minimum, I've seen that show 10 times. But I only watched Chocolate once. Okay? I watched it back in 2019, 2020 when it was running, and then I never saw it again. So let's just leave it at that, okay? Um, oh, I will say this though. The director of the show I'm Sorry, I Love You is Yi Hyung-min. And this is Yi Hyung-min and Lee Kyung-hee's first collaboration since they worked on I'm Sorry, I Love You together back in 2004. So, like, a decade and a half later, these two collaborated on another uh, show. And yeah, I don't feel the need to rewatch Chocolate. I'll just leave it at that. Yoon Kye-sang is the male lead actor in this show, and for all the '90s kids, you'd appreciate him. He used to be a K-pop star. Yes, he used to be in the band God. Okay, and then he started acting in 2004, and he's done a lot of acting work over the years. But I mostly remember him as Yoon Pil-ju in The Greatest Love, where he plays the second male lead alongside Yoo In-na, and he played that role very well. He plays like this, Hanisa doctor. Okay, he plays like one of these doctors that like a holistic doctor, acupuncture and all of that. And he's like kind of like an upbeat, like fun, cheerful guy in that show. And then in this one, in Chocolate, he's like super gloomy, like very depressed. A lot of like spacing out, there's a lot of that. And it just doesn't suit him. It does not suit him. I think Chocolate was just a little too depressing. Yeah, which is ironic because like I'm Sorry I Love You is also a very depressing show. I'm Sorry I Love You is one of the most depressing K-dramas of all time, okay? It's not even a K-drama. It was originally a Japanese manga, I believe, and then I think they turned it into a Japanese drama, and then South Korea bought the rights and then they remade it into I'm Sorry I Love You. And both the male lead and the female lead in I'm Sorry I Love You, tragic. They're very tragic characters. Super sad, crying. Okay, it's awful. But it's also a very like I don't know, there's something sweet sweet yet sorrowful about it, and so that's why we all loved it. We watched it a lot. Whereas with Chocolate, it's like I don't know, 15 years later, I'm older and I'm just like I don't feel like watching a grown man and a grown woman cry constantly, like clutching onto each other, weeping hysterically. I guess I'm just not in the mood for it. Something about it is just like a little too dark. And also it didn't make a whole lot of sense. They shot this series like all over the world too. I think they shot parts of it in like Europe. I think out in Italy or whatever. In any case, you know what? I'm not gonna badmouth it anymore. You guys can dig into it if you feel like it, but yeah, I just feel like I'm Sorry I Love You is a way better show. Maybe Lee Hyung-min and Lee Kyung-hee just don't have it anymore. You know, maybe their time together is, yeah, that time, that's the sun for that horizon has now set, and it's time for them to, you know, chart out into different waters, perhaps.